very good evening, Zimbabwe. This is Studio 7 Live Talk coming to you live from the Voice of America in Washington this April the 28th, 2015. Welcome to the women's segment, the Women's Roundtable. I'm Marvelous Mhlanganya Huye.
And I'm Praxedis Jeremiah.
And today, PJ, on the Women's Roundtable, we've got a very explosive topic. We are speaking about the constitutional decision that was made yesterday, which outlawed the arrest of commercial sex workers or prostitutes without evidence. What's your view on the issue?
To join our discussion, you can call us on 001-202-619-2077. The number again, 001-202-619-2077. And we'll call you back.
And Live Talk goes out to Zimbabwe on the 490, on the 4930, 5940 and 15455 shortwave kilohertz Monday through Friday. But for you ladies out there, Thursday is your day. Shinache Madzimai.
And we are also on the web. You can find us on www.voazimbabwe.com, loba www.voashona.com, loba njalo ku www.voandebele.com.
Bekuyiyo indaba ebivele ihlupha ukuthi ke abantu loba amapholisa azathu ukubamba umuntu wesifazane besithi nguye ke othengisa umzimba, kodwa lo bethenga ubengaboni. Even sisiya sikhangela lezigabeni, umuntu ongumama othengisa umzimba ukhangelelwa phansi, kanti ke obaba kade yibo abethenga bengakhangelelwa phansi. Ngakho ke isisekelo sombuso elizwe namhlanje sikuzwa sokuvela i-Constitutional Court kuyakubeka sobala ukuthi ke kakulacala uma umuntu ongumama ethengise umzimba kungekho umuntu oyindoda obuye wathi ke mina ngilandwe ngumama lo wathi uyangithengisela, ngakho ngimbeka icala lokuthi uthengisa umzimba. Amapholisa kumele athi ukuthi avikela omama ukuthi bangahambe ebusuku kini, babavikela ezigebenengeni, babavikela kuni, kodwa umama ohamba ebusuku ekwazi lapha ayakhona, ekwazi akufunayo, ekwazi akudingayo, ngephula umthetho. Ngoba siphila elizweni elakhululwayo kudala, asisekho isikhathi samakhefu these days. Siphila in a democratic society, independence yethu sayithola kudala. Ngakho umunye lomunye umuntu ulelungelo lokuba sendaweni ethile ngesikhathi lapho azithola ekhona ezilong engephula umthetho.
Zvinorevazvo kuti munhu akasungwa manje nemapurisa wonzwa kumatare zvichinziwota kubata nemhosva yekuti wakamirizika kana kunga uchitsvakiridza kuti uite zvepabonde, mapurisa akufanira kuratidza kuti chii chaitwa chinoratidza kuti munhu uyu anga achiedza kutsvaga zvepabonde zvekuti abhadharwe, uye kuti ndiani aitirwa zvinhu izvozvo. Saka haungangosungwe kunzi wangowanikwa wakamira kunze. Zvinofanira kutoratidzwa kuti pane zvawaita uye pane munhu wawazviita kwaari kuti uwe uchikwanisa kunzwa pamatare zvakati kadzi kuti uzonzi iwe wanga uchiedza kuita zvepabonde uchizoda kubhadhara. Chakaitika ndechekuti gore rapera muna March 17 March 2014 vakasungwa vakawanda madzimai. Apatonga tichimirira vanomwe madzimai vanga vaunzwa kumatare vakasungwa munzvimbo dzemaharare dzinonzi maavenues. Ndobva vanzi inini nekuti takuwanai makamira ipapapo tinokusungai nekuti mamuri kuda kuti muunze vanhu kuti vaite zvepabonde muchibhadharo. Saka magweta akaona kuti pamapepa zvanga zvisina kubuda kuti muri kuti chii chakaitwa nemadzimai aya, uye vakazviita kunani kuti inini muzoti vava vachida kuita zvepabonde. Magweta pakataura kudaro, zvavakataura hazvina kutambirwa nedare rekuzasi. Ndobva vazokumbira kuti nyaya iyi iunzwe kudare rekumusoro-soro kuti vaongorore kuti izvi zvakamira sei maererano nekodzero dzevanhu dziri mubumbiro remutemo, ende ndo zvakazoita kuti tizosvike kudare guru renyika.
My name is Kavita Kumalo. I'm the Member of Parliament for Bulawayo East and a gender activist. I am on cloud 9 that the Constitutional Court nullified the Criminal Codification Act, which was perceiving that every woman that walks the streets in Zimbabwe is perceived to be a prostitute. To be exact, the Criminal Codification Act, Section 8.2. And to me, it is very sad that at the time when I was talking about this law, there was a serious misconception on why I raised the violation that this law was doing to the rights of women. To me, it was not about the issue of prostitution. To me, it was a violation whereby women are being denied the right to work at night, even if they're coming from school or they're coming from work or whatever that they're doing at night. And then, because as far as this law was concerned, it then meant that every single woman in this country, the 52% of us, as per the law of this country, we are all prostitutes. So if the government then could not repeal that law for the benefit of these women to be able to work at night, coming back from school or from work, let them then legalize the prostitution that they're talking about. And secondly, my other argument was, how do the police identify that we are prostitutes? Because in some instances, you find a situation whereby a woman is working with a boyfriend, a fiancé, or a husband. They literally arrested the woman and leave the man, even if that woman was married or working with a boyfriend. So to me, it was a serious violation, and there was need for that law to be repealed. And I am so happy that the Constitutional Court has seen this law from my viewpoint to say women have a right to work at night.
And today on the Women's Roundtable, we are looking at yesterday's Constitutional Court ruling outlawing the arrest of women suspected of being commercial sex workers without evidence. What is your view on the issue?
And the Constitutional Court as well, or the ConCourt, outlawed police's operations. Some of them were codenamed Chipochirorwa, some were called Kuchaira. There were so many names, but in which women were being arrested in the avenues area, like in Harare, on allegations of soliciting for paid sex.
And PJ, as you know, the court actually ruled that in the absence of a man who claims to have been approached by a woman's arrest is unconstitutional.
Mm-hmm. The women argued that there are vulnerable groups and also contended that their right to personal liberty guaranteed in Section 49 of the Constitution and their right to equal protection and benefit of the law has been violated.
So what are your views on the issue? We are waiting patiently to hear from you, our valued listeners, and we have guests in the studio. So this is going to be an interesting topic today, PJ.
Quite interesting. Singakai wethu osethekeleleyo namhlanje kuma studios ethu othani ngithi fahla ngamancane isihloko sendaba lamhlanje. Isihloko sendaba sithi sikhangela udaba lolu olwesinqumo esethulwe emthethwandaba we-Constitutional Court kumbe i-ConCourt. Uthi wona umthethwandaba amapholisa akusamelanga babophe abesifazana mahlayana emigwaqweni ezitaladeni lapho bebabanakanela kumbe bebabophela phansi komthetho wokuthi babe bethengisa imizimba yabo, beziphilisa ngokuthengisa imizimba yabo. Ikanti-ke ngezinye zezikhathi kube kubanjwa kube kubuthwa labanye abesifazana abazihambelayo abangasibo labo abaphila ngokuthengisa imizimba yabo. Marvelous.
Aiwa PJ, chokwadi nhasi iri mugango yakati simbei. Tiri kutarisa mutongo wakaturwa nedare repamusoro reConstitutional Court nezuro rakati iro mapurisa haachabvumidzwa kusunga madzimai avanenge vachifungidzira kana vakaona madzimai achizvifambirawo vari vega zvaisimboitwa nyanya muHarare kuye kwatinoti kuma-avenues vachifungidzirwa ivo kuti vari kuita basa reupfambi hazvichabvumirwa kana pasina umbowo. Saka nhasi tichange tichizeya nhasi tatsikwa neprovince nhasi tine munyarikani ari muno mustudio medu muzvare Gladys Senderai avo vari kuita zvidzidzo zvepamusoro imo muno muAmerica asi vaakugadzirira ivo kuti vachidzokera kumusha. Asi chakanaka pana muzvare Senderai ndechekuti igweta pachezvavo. Saka tokuchingamidzai nemufaro pano pachirongwa chedu muzvare Senderai.
Thank you. Hello, Zimbabwe. My name is Gladys Senderai. I recently attained my LLM in Democratic Governance and Rule of Law from the Ohio Northern University. Before I came to study my master's, I was working at Veritas, as the presenters have said, as a lawyer. And I'm excited to be on the show. I think it's a very interesting and controversial topic. And yeah, I can't wait to get discussing.
While we are on that issue, if you can just give us your take. You have been practicing law in Zimbabwe before coming here to do your master's. What's your take on what's happening in Zimbabwe right now and this ruling? What does it mean for the women?
I think it's a very progressive ruling. I myself have lived in the avenues before, and you find that maybe you're outside waiting for a ride from your friend, and the police come and they say you're soliciting for prostitution, and you're like, no, I'm waiting for a lift from my friend. And you can't prove that in the same way that they cannot prove that you are actually soliciting for prostitution. So I think this is very progressive, and it's good that they need, in order for a prosecution to go through that, they need proper evidence. And I think it's progressive, and it goes a long way in protecting not just human rights, but the rights of women, because I feel like a lot of commercial sex workers have their rights violated and don't have the courage to speak up because already there's a lot of stigma in that area. So I feel like it's a very progressive ruling. Yes.
Tombopinda murimi rwamai asi munoona mapurisa achizotambira here mutongo iwoyo.
Yeah, ipapo ndo panotinetsei, because kazhinji mapurisa vanenge vasina kunyatsotrainwa kuti vanyatsoziva kuti ndo zvinenge zvichiitika, and zvinenge zvataurwa kucourt kudare hazvizvo zvavanozoita on the ground. So I think panofanira kunge pane a very intensive drive yeinformation kuti mapurisa anyatsodzidziswa kuti aiwa hamukwanisi kungosunga vanhu musina umbowo hwakakwana. Otherwise kana pasina that connection between zvinenge zvataurwa nedare nezvinoitwa nemapurisa, then it means that it's still techingodzokera kumashure.
Aiwa, tinotenda muzvare Senderai PJ. Tinenge tine munyarikani wedu wechipiri, Honorable Tabitha Khumalo. Mochimbokurukura navo.
Wathi ngiqale ngamukele unkosazana Gladys Senderai, siyakwamukela kuhlelo lwethu, njalo uGladys sekhulumile lapha uqinisele lapho ngitsho khona ukuthi kwabanye uthi yena useke wadibana lalo udubo lokuthi ubemelele ukuthi athathwe imota ngabangani bakhe ehlala kuma avenues, kodwa ke wabuthwa ngamapolisa. Besithi yena ngomunye walabo abaphila ngokuthengisa imizimba yabo. Siyakwamukela ke kuhlelo Makhumalo.
Hello, how are you? I'm good.
Hello.
Hello.
Siyakwamukela Honorable Tabitha Khumalo.
Sorry?
PJ panenge paita macross line up. Azvinazvo basa. Tombodzokera kune munyarikani wedu ari muno mustudio tichitsvaga Honorable kuti vari papicha ipo. Ms. Senderai, maybe tell us a little bit about your program while you are here. How are you going to enhance the work that you do as a lawyer in Zimbabwe?
Okay, so the program was very specialized. It was, so as I said, it's an LLM in democratic governance and rule of law. And so I think the most notable courses are comparative constitutional law, which I'm very excited to go back home and try and see what lessons can be drawn, especially from other countries, because I'm sure, as you know and as our viewers know, we've got a constitution which is, I suppose, still new by any standard. And there's still a long way to go in terms of implementation and compliance. And I'm very excited to be working in that area.
Aiwa, tinotenda muzvare Senderai. Tinenge tine munyarikani wedu muzvare Tariro Tandi. Tokuchingamidzai pachirongwa.
Makasimba here.
Aiwa, takasimba. Tambotaura nemi mukati pane zvinyorwa zvamakaita panyaya iyo yatiri kutaura nayo nezvenhasi nezvemutongo wakaturwa kuconstitutional court. Tipewo mafungiro enyu.
Ndingati nini basa rangu randinoita ndichishanda nemadzimai. I have just realized kuti madzimai, we have so many laws that police our bodies at our own advantage. So we are not given the choices. I mean, we are not allowed to make the choices that we want with our bodies. So when I was working on my master's thesis, and I was looking at sex workers and looking at the laws governing sex work, I mean prostitution in Zimbabwe, and then saying, what's the best option that will benefit the prostitutes in Zimbabwe, as they are called. And then I realized, in Zimbabwe, probably the legal framework that we would want is to decriminalize the law around prostitution. Because, I mean, the law at the end of the day, really, if you look at the judgment by the Constitutional Court, it's basically, you know, bringing up the issues that I was looking at when I was doing my thesis, that how do you prove that someone is soliciting for the purposes of prostitution? When you see me walking in the Avenue Street, how do you tell? How can you just arrest someone? Many people, I have friends that have been arrested because they were suspected to be sex workers. So I think this is an interesting landmark case that will actually go a long way in, you know, ensuring that the freedom of movement, right to dignity for women is really realized in a country like Zimbabwe.
Thank you very much, Ms. Tandi. Ms. Sengeya, you've heard what Ms. Tandi is saying. She's a women's rights activist herself. And give us your comment in regards to what she has just said her thesis was.
Right. I think what she said definitely makes sense because women vanojinyirirwa, and without cause. Like, I think the ruling is very progressive because the fact that evidence has to be shown first before any prosecution can take place. I think it protects women in many ways. And it's not just the women who are genuinely engaged in commercial sexual activities, even women who are just walking the streets or waiting for a lift outside their house. So I think it's very progressive.
Aiwa, PJ, muzvare honorable Khumalo vanenge tazovawana. Munogona kumbuti dedede.
Nkosazana Tabita Khumalo, siyakwamukela kuhlelo.
Ngiyabonga bakithi.
Makhuya uyaluzwa udaba olusegudwini lamhlanje.
Yebo sizwile mama.
Wena usibona njani isinqumo lesi esethulwe ngumthethondaba weConcord?
Isinqumo esethulwe i-Constitutional Court ngibachayela ihlombe. Ngoba ngazama ukuthi ngikhulume udaba lolu abantu bangilengisa bangithethisa bengaboni ukuthi udubo engikhuluma ngalo angikhulumi ngomama abadingisa imizimba. Ngangikhuluma ukuthi umthetho lo we-criminal codification uthi khona omama iZimbabwe yonke izifebe. Singabe ngakhetha amapolisi ukuthi babopha abantu izifebe, umama owendileyo, umama ovele emsebenzini, usisi ovele esikoleni. Izini uhamba lo muntu wesilisa babe bopha umama bachiya umuntu wesilisa. So okwanamhlanje hayi kuthi i-Constitutional Court isingigezile babonile ukuphula kwelungelo labomama yilongo mthetho.
So lina inhlanganiso zabomama, inhlanganiso ngathi amaqembu ezombusazwe likwamukele ngayiphi indlela?
Kasikaxoxisani ngalo udaba lolu iParliament sivalile saze sivule mhla ka-8. Kodwa ngilethemba ukuthi iningi labo babalile amaphephandaba bezwa ngale i-judgment. Mina isami isifiso kathesi sengilaso ngesokuthi amapholisa yethu inkinga yokuthi nxa umthetho uphumile emthethwandaba bandise ukuthi bangaze bawulandela. So lokhu sokuyisikhathi sokuthi inhlanganiso ezilela ilungelo labomama baqalise ukufundisa omama ngale i-judgment. Njalo amapholisa lawo kumele bafundiswe ngale i-judgment ukuthi kumele bahloniphe omama bangabavuphi ebusuku bangabahlunguluzi. So ngilethemba ukuthi uma iParliament ivulwa kuzazama ukuthi sifake imotion eyokuthi sikhankasele ukuthi le i-judgment kayingene kuzulu ukwenzela ukuthi amapolisa nabesifazana babekwazi ukuthi sokulo mthetho onjalo.
What is yeqele ngale kuyesindisi Honorable Khumalo, you yourself, you are a legislator. How did you receive the news or the ruling of the Concord?
I was absolutely so happy with the Constitutional Court judgment on the violation of women's rights vis-a-vis the criminal codification law. Because the whole intention of my raising the issue of Section 82, Section 81, Section 2, was to show that this law, basically what it says is that every woman in Zimbabwe is a prostitute, whether married or not, whether a student or not. So since we are all perceived to be prostitutes, if the state cannot then repeal this law, I thought the best way out was at least let them legalize it so that women are able to work the street. We have students that do evening classes. We have got hairdressers that go into people's hair. We have got women that work at night. But those women are being penalized for working at night because that's what the law says. So I am absolutely on cloud 9. And secondly, I've been vindicated.
Yes,
the intention was not about commercial sex workers. The intention was the right of a woman. That includes me.
Yes, thank you very much there, Honorable Tabitha Khumalo. I know you've been on this fight for a very long time. So maybe now you're receiving, at least some acknowledgement that your fight is being recognized. But thank you very much. But for now, we're going to go to some of our listeners who sent in some very interesting comments on this Concord ruling before we take our next guest.
Varambidza mukadzi nemurume nenyaya yekuti dzimba dzisiri kuparara kuburikidza nezviri kuitwa nevanhu ivava. Saka munhu wese ngaarambidze kufamba. Zvirwere zviri kuwanda kuburikidza nekufamba kunenge kuchiita vanhu ivava mukati memugwagwa. Saka ndinongotarisirwa kuti dai hurumende yachona yangoti varume nevakadzi hapana anobvumirwa kufamba.
Vamabhondo, nyaya iyi munoiona sei yakatongwa nedare reConstitutional Court?
Aiwa, nyaya iyi yakanaka hondo yemuntu.
Tingati nyaya iyi yakatinakira papi pacho?
Nekuti munhu ane kodzero dzake kuita zvaanoda panguva yaanoda.
But hatingati here kuti unge kwaita dare reConstitutional Court uku kungatowedzera chipambi munzvimbo?
Aiwa, chinhu chinonzi chipambi chagara hatiti chiriko. Unoda kwokuti wacho anenge achinzi aita chipambi anofanira kunge ndiye abhadhara mari, but zvataurwa neConstitutional Court zvokuti wacho chakubhadhara mari ndiye munhu anenge aita chipambi zvitori okay. Unoda kwokuti varume ndivo vanokumbira bonde kuvanhukadzi.
Hakusi kuti here kudzikisira simba remapurisa, sezvo mapurisa anga achiedza nemhando dzose dzaanokwanisa.
Mapurisa anga auda kutsvaga kuwana mari, vakabata munhu iyeye kazhinji kacho vanga vasingasviki neukamba zvataiona isi nemaziso muno muchikoi anditi. Saka vanhu ivavo vanga vakubatwa vobviswa mari, iye munhu wakwanisa kurilizwa kuti aende kumba.
Alright, saka kureva kuti hamusi kupokana nematongero aita dare
reConstitutional. Ini ndiri kuwirirana nawo nekuti mapurisa anga akuita huori. Kungoona munhu wese eita kubata chichi akutoburiswa mari $5 kana $10 munhu akurilizwa kunzi aende kumba kwavo.
My name is Elias Maruf. I'm calling from Bulawayo, Zimbabwe. I think this thing which is being done is a legalized prostitution, and they've made prostitution a legal thing in Zimbabwe. That they made a very big mistake. They must reverse something, I think.
My name is Gift from Bulawayo. I would like to applaud the Constitutional Court for rightly blocking the police from arresting the women who will be loitering during the night. Personally, I think it was long overdue, partly because some of the police officers were benefiting from this operation. The law must not be selective, but it must be applied to both men and women. We are all equal in this country. I thank you.
Some very interesting comments there from some of our valued listeners. They sent those comments on WhatsApp, and we're encouraging you, our listeners, to please engage with us. Please send your comments. Tell us what you think of our programming. They were commenting there on the recent ruling by the Constitutional Court yesterday. Ms. Sendea, you're in the studio. So give us your comment on what you heard from some of our listeners before we take our valued Koli Wenyoni, who's been on the line for a while.
Thank you. One of the callers mentioned sort of reining in on the power of the police, and I think that is exactly what this consent order was about. The way I understood it is that it was an exception to the charge because it was too vague. And the reason it was too vague is because the prosecution was not clear about whom was solicited and in what manner the solicitation took place. And the witnesses who were present, the sort of how they concluded that solicitation for prostitution was taking place. And I think if these three things are required before anyone can be arrested for purposes of soliciting for prostitution, it definitely limits the power of the police, because they're supposed to operate in a certain parameter. And once that is required, I think certainly rule of law is definitely enhanced, because they have to, before prosecution can take place, these three elements have to be proved, or at least shown before the case can go any further. And I think it's very progressive, because another one of the callers also mentioned that there's a lot of corruption, and I think it's very true that the police will arrest even people who are outside waiting for a ride from their friends, or who are simply walking to the shops. And because you know you're innocent, you don't want to spend the night in jail, you have no choice but to pay this bribe. So I really think if these requirements are adhered to strictly, and the police are trained that you can't arrest a person unless you can satisfy these three elements, then I think it'll go a long way in terms of protecting women generally, not just women working on the streets.
Aiwa, tinotenda PJ tombotora muzvarekoli wenyoni vanenge vati mirei kwekanguva.
Iye. Siyakwamukela kuhlelo lethu Nkosazana Kholi wenyoni.
Ngiyabonga.
Iye. Wena-ke ngiyakwazi ukuthi uyingcwethi kwezemithetho. Ungasichasisela-ke kancane ukuthi linali kwamukele ngayiphi indlela isinqumo lesi esethulwe yiConcord?
Ngizaqala ngokukwazisa ukuthi mina ngisebenza lentatheli izindaba. Ngikhangele ikakhulu ukuthi ma bebhala izindaba kumbe ma besenza ama-reports abo bakhuluma kanjani ngabesifazana. Lamhla ekuseni ngithe ngikutwitter ngathola ukuthi iChronicle ibhale yathi hookers. Kusitsho khona abafebayo kumbe abafazi abafebayo. Lokhu bekuludubo ngoba vele nxa ukhangele indlela okwakubotshwa ngayo omama bezihambela nje phakathi kwebusuku, kwakuvele kutshengisa ukuthi omama bethu ukuthi akumelanga behambe phakathi kwebusuku. Kusitsho ukuthi amalungelo abomama ayengalinganiswa lamalungelo abobaba. Mina njengomuntu owake wabotshwa ngizihambela 2005 ngizithwele, ngaba le experience yokuthi ngathi ngiphakathi kwe-defender, and indaba le ngayibhala yaze yaphapishwa naku-Gender in the Media Southern Africa. Ngathi sengithethwe ku-defender ngabe sengiqalisa ukukhala ngisithi kodwa mina bengambopha bethi ngiyaseba njani, mina ngivele ngikhanye ukuthi ngizithwele. Omunye umama wayehlezi khona phana ku-defender wathi no, mina vele ngiyasebenza ngi-commercial sex worker, but lami ngizithwele, and ngizithwele ngoba ngamithiswa umpholisa. Into eyayisenzakala ukuthi omama abaningi ababebotshwa kwakufika esikhathini sokuthi labo in terms of ukuthi bethole ukuphuma kuma-police cells ekuseni, kwakusiba kutholakala ukuthi bayaba violated amapholisa labo bebafose into some commercial into some sexual activities. So mina ngiyalithakazelela ngiyathakazelela iruling le ikakhulu ukuthi izatshintsha even indlela inkatheli izindaba ezikhangela ngabo abantu besifazana.
Ngizakuthi ubambe ecingweni khona lapho ngoba isikhathi sethu asisavumi kuleli hlandla la kuqala. Kumele siyeqele ngale ebulenjini, kodwa kwamanje ngizathi ubambe ecingweni khonapho Manyoni sizaqhubekela phambili ngodaba lwethu.
Yes, thank you there, PJ. That sounded very, very interesting. So we can't wait to continue on the next segment. But we have Winnet Shamyarira who's also on the line. But we will take you, Winnet, in our next segment as we progress when we're streaming live on the internet. And you can catch us on www.voazimbabwe.com. And to all our guests, please stay with us. And also our valued listeners and our in-house guests as we progress on the internet. PJ.
Asihlanganeni ke uhlandla lesibili lapho sisebulenjini, kodwa ke kulabo abasemsakazweni we-radio sesilivalelisa kwamanje asidibaneni ngeviki elizayo. Upraxitis Jeremiah.
welcome again. And if you're just joining us, this is the Women's Round Table here on Live Talk, where we are speaking about the Constitutional Court hearing that was ruled yesterday, where the arrest of women believed to be commercial sex workers is now outlawed if it's done without evidence. What are your views on the issue? PJ.
Kwabasanda kusixhuma singumsakazo weStudio 7 owe Voice of America sesingene ngale kuhlandla lesibili lohlelo lwethu asihluzeni bomama. Lamhlanje lapho esihluza khona udaba lolu olwesinqumo esethulwe ngumthethandaba weConcord esokuthi abasifazana bengabotshwa amahlayana besetheswa umlandu ukuthi baziphilisa ngokuthengisa umzimba. Ikanti ke kuzehlakalo ezehlukeneyo ezenzakale eminyakeni edluleyo kube kubuthwa labesifazane abangayisibo laba abasebenzisa imizimba yabo ukuziphilisa, njengalokho kade kukhulunywa nje Kholiwe Nkosazana Kholiwe Nyoni singakayiqeli ngapha kuhlandla lesibili. Singakontinya lokhu khona Nkosazana Nyoni.
PJ satenda kuna mzvare Kholiwe Nyoni tombotanga tazeya nerurimi rwamai kuti nhasi tiri kuita nezvei. Aiwa, nhasi sekunzwa kwamamboita kune avo vachangopinda muchirongwa tiri kutarisa mutongo wakaturwa iwo neConstitutional Court nezuro wekuti vaye vanofungidzirwa madzimai kuti vari kuita basa rechipfambi vanofanira kunge vane umbo kuti vawanikwe ivo vachisungwa nemapurisa. Saka toda kunzwa imi pfungwa dzenyu. Ende nhasi pano pari kunakidza nekuti imo muno mustudio tina muzvare Gladys Senderai vari muno muAmerica vapedza ivo zvidzidzo zvepamusoro asi ivo igweta kuZimbabwe ndo vari kutibatsira kuzeya munyaya yedu. Uyezve tina muzvare Kholiwe Nyoni sekutaura kwaita PJ, tinazve muzare Winnet Shamyarira vambomira hatina tanzwa izwi ravo.
Aiwa, ngatichitanga namuzvare Winnet.
Aiwa, pakanaka. Muzvare Shamyarira tinokuchingamidzai pachirongwa.
Makadishe.
Aiwa, tiri wadi muri kuinzwa iri mugangomo. Tipewo pfungwa dzenyu.
Ini mukadzi wemuZimbabwe ndiri kunzwa ndichifara neruling yakaitwa neConstitutional Court. But I also just need to say kuti ma-arrest anga agara achiitwa nemapurisa, they're already illegal in the sense that Mapurisa would arrest women based on what they would call loitering for the purpose of prostitution. And yet in our law, loitering for the purpose of, there's nothing like loitering for the purpose of prostitution. But it was easier for them to arrest women. And I think like the Constitutional Court has already highlighted, Kuti, you need to be able to prove Kuti Muna anga solicit for the services, sexual services. But Mapurisa taisunga vanukadzi. Vaingosunga on the basis yekuti uri munhukadzi ari out at night. And yesterday when I saw the headline yanga iri Newsday yekuti Constitutional Court makes a ruling on says my arrest of sex workers are illegal. My quick comment was, it's not about sex workers, it's about women of Zimbabwe. Because when the police arrested you, they'll be arresting you on the basis of you being a woman out at night. And for me, it was also an issue, Yekuti, someone is policing what I do with my body. The state has taken up a role, Yekuti, we need to police what women are doing with their bodies. And having been a victim of an arrest before, I think 3 times in my life I've been arrested, for being out at night. And then they ask you questions around your marital status.
Muchare, nyatsotitsanangurei kuti zvakafamba sei kuti vari kunzwa vanyatsonzwisa kuti zvaifamba sei pamaizowanikwa muchitorwa. Tinoona kuti kana muzvare Senderai vari muno vatiwo navo vakazviona zvichiitika izvi kumaAvenues, asi nyatsotitsanangurei pazvakaitika kwamuri zvakafamba sei?
I think my first arrest was when I was 18 years old and we were having a leavers dinner pajamaswan. Ndangandadzika pasi with another female colleague, tikasangana mapurisa. We explained to them that we're having a leavers dinner. They could go upstairs to confirm, and they refused to confirm. Vakatisunga, vakaenda nesu kuArrest Central. And they were practically arresting every woman they saw on the street. I remember I was 18, very young. And there was this woman who was putting on a Nando's uniform. I flagged her down, but I changed her out at night. Then we got there, they decided to call Jameson. It was what and then when they told yes, there was a business dinner and they then told us so that was the first time. The second time I was going towards the parked car and they put her in a bar and I was going towards the parked car. At that moment, and I because the military, but I'm going towards the car. And I was with my boyfriend then.
Pano panenge paita foni yacha minu zvayakuita. Tomboenda kuna muzare Koliwe Nyoni PJ.
Yeah, she was also explaining her ordeal that she encountered. You can go on Koliwe. In English this time.
Into engibona engani yayihlupha kakhulu was especially a contradiction, because when I got arrested, one of the issues or one of the things that happened when we got Safika at drill hole, Bulawayo, at the time I was still working in Bulawayo. Ironically, the person who had to get me out was my then boss, Father Nigel Johnson, because I was working at Radio Dialogue, so I quickly had to call him to come and pick me up. Is that some of the women about the police station, wakuthiwa livula ama-handbag in, ungatholakala vele ku-handbag yakho kulama-condom, kuhle kuthiwa ngempela uyafeka. Kusitsho ukuthi ngesikhathi sakhona kwakuthiwa vele nxa uvele wawuthengisa umzimba kumbe wawufeka ngesikhathi sakhona wakungamelanga utholakale unama-condom, which I always found as a contradiction ekuthini ufazi loba nje nxa umkhangela unama-rights wokuthi engage in any commercial sex work as a way of raising money for ifamily yakhe. But nxa esethwele ama-condom kutsho ukuthi lo umfazi vele umuntu ovele responsible, and there would never be commercial sex workers without the demand, which is why lamhla ngithokozelela i-constitutional court ruling le ukuthi nxa isithi commercial sex work is a problem ezweni lethu laseZimbabwe, kusamele kubotshwe bonke abesilisa labesifazane.
PJ wongoti gaga tinzwisise zvavataura zvare vari muno mustudio tanyatsoteerera chatanzwa kuti kana une makondomu bag saka chipedzisa
izvi. She can go on if you need to ask her.
Kana une makondomu mubag vanzi nemapurisa, iwewe ndiyo evidence iripo yokuti iwewe wanga uchiita chipambi. Nekuti zvinenge zvichinzi mukadzi anotakura makondomu zvoreva kuti mukadzi ipambi. And yet at the same time kana tichizvitarisa mukadzi iye tikatarisa ma-HIV AIDS statistics atinawo muZimbabwe zvino zvinonzi ma-HIV statistics zvinonzi ma-rates acho vanhu who are more responsible or who have control over sexual activity, ma-commercial sex workers, because vanogona ku-enforce condom use. But at the same time, ndo zvaitosungirwa madzimai kuti ukangowanikwa uchifamba pakati peusiku hazvicharevi kuti a responsible woman anenge achiziva kuzvidzivirira during sexual activities, asi kuti munhu anotakura condom ipambi.
Aiwa, tinotenda. Tombodzokera kwamuri muzvare senderai manzwa zvaro zviri kutaura vatinavo apa parunare, munozvionawo sei?
I think ndo wirirana nezvavari kutaura, and ndoda kuramba ndichingodzokera kunyaya yekuti this order is very important because inodzora simba emapurisa, and kazhinji vakadzi vanenge vasina either the courage kana kuti even the means ekuita challenge nenge zvaitika kwavari. Saka mapurisa kana akanyatsodzidziswa kuti vanofanira kunyatsofollowa magwara anenge ataurwa nedare, I think zvinoprotecta vakadzi vazhinji, and it will be very good in the long term.
I think we'll go to Tariro Tandi. Judging from what our guests and listeners are saying here, Tariro, do you think there should be a movement to actually educate women on their rights now that this law has been passed?
Thank you so much. I think there is actually need to educate women on, their rights. The fact that there was one listener who was saying now allowing these women to, walk around, it will cause disease. And then I was thinking, so she was saying that they need to actually ensure men and women not walk around. But the issue is what does that do to a person? It curtails to movement, your freedom. Like right now, I should just be able to walk, get into town, walk. We are not, during the time of pre-independence when we had certain areas that were designated for certain races and classes of people. So we should be allowed to walk anywhere we want to walk to, and I should be allowed to do and wear what I want. And so looking at this conversation that we are having, it is important to educate women because as one of the guests is saying that, it's difficult to actually ensure that the police do take it because in this instance, these are the culprits. They are the ones who arrest people on presumption that these people are actually sex workers or prostitutes or whatever it is that they would want to call them. So it's important for women to be educated because then you can challenge. When you get arrested, you can actually say, but no, there was actually, a constitutional matter that was decided. But when you don't know your rights, they will definitely just arrest you and you have nothing else that you can do. And they tend to actually pound people who do not know, not know your rights as an ordinary citizen, you actually then find yourself being abused. And as I always say, the rights are never taken on a silver platter. You have to demand them. And I want to, for me as a Zimbabwean woman, I really applaud women who actually, went through the whole process of making the application. It was a long process, but they went through it just to defend the things that they believe in. Whatever we would want to call them, whatever it is that they do, but if it is what they do and they're earning a living out of it, we should, as Zimbabweans, honestly, their bodies, and they're allowed to do what it is that they want to do with their bodies. And I think for them having done this for us and winning this war as Zimbabwean women, I really applaud them. And I think it's a positive. For me, it's a landmark case that has changed so many things for women in Zimbabwe.
Thank you so much, Mr. Riro. I know, this is so exciting, and so we're trying to get as many people in as possible. So if you can just hold on the line, because I saw you had a very explosive debate on Facebook, but we'll come back to you on that. Tombotora Sisi Teresa Tapfuma vari muHarare. Hello, Sisi Teresa. Aiwa, tiripo tiri nani zvedu. Imi muri kuona sei mutongo uyu waturwa mudare?
Ndoona sechinhu chakanaka chaitwa because zvasevhawo kunyangwe navo vanhu vasingaite prostitution, because like ini ndogara kuAvenues area in Harare. Ukabva kubasa dzimwe nguva kana kuma10 uchifamba kuenda kumba, you get arrested only you are soliciting for purposes of prostitution. Uchinongo uchienda kumba. So I think zvarerutsirawo vamwe vanhu vasiri kushandisa that job kutsvaga raramo kuti vanokwanisa kufambawo munzira zviri free zvisina kudhisturbwa nemapurisa.
Asi Sisi Teresa, munoona vamwewo vari munharaunda saimomo mumaAvenues vachizonzwisisa here kuti kodzero vanadzo uyezve vanogona kuchallenja mapurisa?
Dzokoro dzaimvunzwa ini, sorry.
Kuti munoona vamwewo zvavo madzimai sekutaura kwamaita kuti imi munogara mumaAvenues vachizoziva here kuti vane kodzero dzekuti aiwa imi mapurisa hamubvumidzwe kundisunga nekuti pane mutemo waturwa kuconstitutional court?
Ipapo panenge pakuda kuti madzimai apiwe zivo concerning the constitutional law yapaswa nhasi, nekuti most of us tinenge tiri ignorant of zvinhu zvinenge zvichiitika. Especially nyaya yemarights ka tikada unazozvitereresa most of us hatizozivi kana mitemo yedu chaiyo yemuzimbabwe tinotsipirirwa dzimweni dzenguva because hatizivi mitemo. So I think there is a need to advocate I don't know kuti kana toti maworkshop here kana toti chii chinoita kuti vakadzi vagone kuziviswa zvinhu zvinoenderana nemarights avo mukati mekurarama. Nekuti I'll give an example ndogona kutaura zvinhu zvisirizo pamhepo like kune mapurisa ga anotofamba ga vachida kutongotsvaga vachitonhonga vanhu vachiitira mari. Like I'll give an example yekuti pane musi wandakambosungwa neni ndichibva kubasa handidi ndasungwa ndobva mumotikari mandakaiswa vanofamba nemacab mapurisa aya
mataxi cab
macab emataxi nendayaya. So they put me in a car and then mumota mune natori nevanhu vanonasoita prostitution. No, you could tell from the way they were dressed kuti vanhu ava mahure handidi. So
tombokubatai muromo ipapo kuti tinoshandisa hedu izwi rekuti fambi nekuti kuti tiremekedzana semadzimai. Taura henyu.
So ndaiswa motikari muya aisi kuti mune vamwe vanhu mune maprostitutes mumotikari momo and then they let go of those prostitutes and they take me to the station and I was wondering kuti kuenini muri kunditora. So ini vanhu ava vabuda panze vanoita transaction yavanoita yekuita sevanobhadharana to an extent kuti iwe uchienda vanenge vachitozivana kuti uyu tinomuziva kuti tinomuziva achifamba masteti. But because inini I'm just a citizen asiri kuziva maconjugal rights ake handimaona ndinongotora noendeswa kustation then I have to pump out $20 for my freedom. Saka ishe kuti panofanira kuitwa dzidziso ingapiwe kuvanhu vechidzimai vasiri mubhizinesi iroro kuti vazive kuti marights avo akamira papi concerning this law yapaswa.
Tinotenda sisi Teresa muve nezuva rakanaka. Tinokutendai chaizvo kunge manga muri pachirongwa chedu ichi.
Aiwa tinotenda.
Nzabuyela kuwe Nkosazana Nyoni. Honorable Tabitha Khumalo actually said she said women need to be educated about this ruling. The police also needs to be educated on this. And I come to your corner now, the media. You said yourself before that you saw a headline which was a bit offensive. What do you do as MISA to educate the media or journalists on how to write stories like
I think
this?
In terms of the agenda related to gender mainstreaming or gender sensitivity, we have been going through ongoing training with especially the Federation of African Media Women of Zimbabwe, FAMS. But you will realize that it is very difficult to change people, especially in a patriarchal society such as the one that we live in Zimbabwe. You find that you still have headlines written VUCA, like I made reference to earlier. And it is usually because in the newsrooms we do not have as many female editors who are gender sensitive and selective of the language or the diction that they should use. But I must say also that as a broadcasting and IT specialist, I am very optimistic, especially with the way that the social internet access and mobile phones have become accessible in Zimbabwe, because it is a fact that we now have an alternative to the tabloids like the H Metro, which continuously, day in and day out, violate our rights as women in terms of the way they portray us in the media. We have spaces that are available. And as much as people will battle with issues around how are we going to educate women about this, if you look at the revolutionary case, I like to refer to it as revolutionary, and it's unfortunate that we lost Winnet earlier. But if you look at the miniskirt protest and the miniskirt marches, how rapidly that miniskirt video went round, and how rapidly, you know, the case went through when the touts got arrested. And, you know, now everyone actually knows that I can wear anything that I want,
and nobody has a right to strip me off my clothes because they disapprove of the way that I dress. So I would like to push or to encourage women's organizations who are on social media platforms, organizations like Pathway Sisterhood, even the Zimbabwe Lawyers for Human Rights, who themselves are the ones who we attribute to this the Concord ruling, to say the social media space is available and women are on social media. I mean, if you look at most academics have written to say that women like to be on Facebook to look at each other's children's pictures and trivial issues. But I think
Miss Nyoni, I think women are now past that. Because just like I was saying, I was actually very intrigued by Tariro Tandi's wall today. She had a burning debate there about this same, Concord ruling. So it's amazing. I know people misconstrue what people do on Facebook, but it's being used, I think, by women as we move forward. Constructively.
Yes.
Yeah. On that note, I'm going to ask you.
My point was, as much as we are working with mainstream media, we
Miss
are aware
Nyoni,
that there is a mushrooming citizen community media, and people are on the internet. The message has to be spread out as widely and as far as possible.
Thank you very much, Miss Nyoni.
Thank you.
Please stay on the line.
Tina sisi Rutendo Chigudu vari pa line. Tisati tadzokera kwamuri hatina kukanganwai misenderai vari muno mustudio nesu. Hello sisi Rutendo Chigudu.
Makasimba here.
Aiwa takasimba. Mungatipowo maonero enyu here mutongo uyu waturwa neConstitutional Court.
I think for me, Constitutional Court has really made a very huge step in terms of women's rights, because you find constitutionally we now have the backing of the law that allows us freedom to be where we want to be, to dress however we want to dress, to interact with whoever we interact with at whatever level. Because you find that Maporisa were becoming the court. I've personally been arrested with that in courts twice, 3 times, because whatever business that I have, then once in a while, maybe a discerning cop on the tarisa, on the flasher, and ask me, no, and they let me go. And I'm wondering, okay, what was that about? So you find freedom of movement yangu was curtailed because it was at one time there was the whole Chipochiroro, Operation Chipochiroro. Who says I want to get married? Like, seriously, it's not every woman who wants to get married. And what business is it, Maporisa, to tell me when to get married? And what business of anyone is it to say, who is policing them? You see? So now, this law, for me, this ruling, is actually then acknowledging what we've been crying for, to say, at that point, we are equal. We are both human beings. We are 2 genders, or at least as far as the law allows. We've got the same rights to move, to dress, to interact, to loiter if we so please. I'll use that in quotes, to loiter. Because unfortunately, we've seen men in Harare, Varipa Zimexmo or formerly Zimexmo. They never get arrested, and that is loitering. But a woman who's standing by the corner, who's even walking down the road or even outside a nightclub, is being arrested because they are soliciting. Who solicits? Is it not the men? Why weren't men ever arrested?
Aiwa, thank you, Sisi Rutendo Chigudu, for being on our program. Rambai mchifona futi nekuti nhasi kufara tine madzimai akawanda uyezve ruling inenge yanyatsobata madzimai akawanda. Tinokutendai Sisi Rutendo.
Ewa, munotende.
Tombodzokera kwamuri, hatina kukanganwai. Muzvare senderai. Manzwa zviri kutaura vari kutifonera uyezve nevanyarikani vedu vatinavo pari zvino. Vakawanda vari kunyanyotaura kuti chiri kunyanyodiwa ruzivo kana kuti dzidziso. Ndo iri kunyanyodiwa kumapurisa ikoko uyezve kumadzimai. Tichienda mberi kana kuti moving forward, zvii zvingaitwe nemamwewo masangano mukuedza kudzidzisa madzimai nyanya panyaya dzekodzero dzavo. Takatarisa mutongo iwoyu.
Okay, Maitabasa, I think chokutanga, I think just basic information, whether muma church, or kwese kunowanikwa madzimai vachiungana even muzvikoro, because zvinhu zviri kuitika even kune vana vadiki vachiri kuchikoro mumauniversities, mumacolleges. It can be something as simple as my flyers, or just even getting people who are knowledgeable about the situation kuti vauye kuzotaura vachita impart this knowledge kune vana ava in order to empower them. But I definitely think empowering and informing the women about their rights is necessary and it's important. But I want to reiterate the point that it has to be done in tandem with educating the police. Because hazvibatsiri kuti ini ndinoti kune mupurisa ndo marights angu ndoziva kuti hamufaniri kundisunga. Mupurisa kuti ndezvako ndiri kukusunga, because at the end of the day, whether I like it or not, ndiye ane power over me and anondisunga. So it's important kuti mapurisa apiwe the adequate training, and in addition to the training, they must actually follow through with what is required of them. Otherwise it just becomes a catch-22 and we go backwards.
Pane vamwewo vari kutizvo mapurisa kana kuti iwo mutongo uyu unogona kuita kuti watopa rusununguko rwakawandisa kune avo vanorarama nekutengesa miri yavo.
Ini sekunzwisisa kwandinoita inini
zvichatowedzera chipfambi. Ndo vamwe vari kutaurawo.
Inini, okay, just from a legal perspective, kunzwisisa kwandinoita, prostitution in itself is not a crime. Soliciting for purposes of prostitution ndo crime yacho. Saka kana mupurisa asingakwanisi kuprove the 3 points of whom was solicited, in what manner was this solicitation undertaken, and how can it be concluded, nevacho vari kuti zvotakazviona zvichiitika kuti zveshuwa yanga iri solicitation. So I think takada kuita straight jacket takati zvinozowedzera kuti vanhu vanozotengesa muviri wavo. We're not looking at the bigger picture, because this is affecting women in general. And it's not just the right here. I think one of the speakers alluded kuti my right of freedom of movement has been deprived. Even freedom of liberty, which is I think one of the bases that this case was actually taken to the Constitutional Court. Because no one kana wasungwa, they're not just going to drive with you around the block. You can go. Usually, we're not going to a police station, because that's part of the intimidatory tactic for you to either pay or they may actually prosecute you. So I think the issue is bigger than that, and we need to look at it from a bird's eye view. And we shouldn't limit ourselves with I think one step forward in terms of protecting not just women's rights but human rights is more important than saying that's my perspective.
Saka vanokwanisa here kuita su vanenge vangotorwa vakaendeswa kupolice station semumwe ataura apa kuti akasungwa akaendeswa kupolice station ndobva anzi ndobva azoregedzwa kuti aite walk back pamwe hauna nemari yekuti ukwire cab udzokere kuJameson Hotel.
Alright, inini sekunzwisisa kwandakaita Magweta paakaendesa nyaya iyi kucourt payakatanga iri kumagistrates court. The basis was that they were accepting to the charges because they were vague. Payakazoenda ku-constitutional court, it's not so much that they were challenging a specific statutory provision. So nothing has necessarily been changed or added. What the court has just said is that the exception to the charges is what was granted. Yes, they were too vague. I think it's possible. It may be very difficult, but it's possible. But inini kodzero ndofunga is definitely available. These 3 things have not been proven, and for that reason, you cannot take it any further. But I definitely understand the point that you're raising. Say my resources and my time have been wasted. I've been incarcerated, and now you expect me to make my own plan in terms of getting back to exactly. Right, I understand that as well.
Isikhathi sethu asavumi wathi ngimbuze 30 seconds kukholiwe inyoni. Inkuthazo bani ongayichiyela abalaleli bethu?
Ngithanda ukuthi kubonke abomama abahambayo.
Well, thank you very much to all our listeners, and especially our in-house guest, Miss Gladys Senderai, who is visiting us from Ohio and is returning to Zimbabwe. And you've been very insightful about this Constitutional Court hearing. And also we had some valued guest, Honorable Tabita Kumalo, Miss Tariro Tandi, Miss Koliwe Nyoni, and we had, really, this was one of our best shows because we had a lot of women coming in and really giving us an insight into what is going on regarding this case, PJ. So thank you very much. This is Marvelous Mhlanga Nyahuye.
Mina Praxedes Jeremiah. Libelo buthongo buhle.
Thank you.